My name is Justin, and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today, we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Colorado. One question I want to start off with is, what percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcies do you think end successfully? What I mean is, actually get out of the debt. Only 38.8%. Why? It's often related to cost and many other variables. So here's what we'll cover in today's video. First, a quick Chapter 13 bankruptcy introduction. Second, your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. Third is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs in Colorado. Fourth is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Colorado. Fifth is the pros and cons attached to Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And sixth is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. Before I go any further, please understand that Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Colorado can be complex. So feel free to ask any questions or leave a comment below, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, please leave a like if you enjoy these videos, or these are always encouraging to us. But first, let's cover an introduction. Number one, what is a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as the wage earners plan because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment for often 3 or 5 years. People like Chapter 13 because it can help stop wage garnishment, foreclosure, and provide you protection from your creditors. Now, one of the most important things to understand is the actual affordability of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Colorado. Basically, what I'm saying is, how much do you have to pay each month, and how long are you going to be in this program, or this plan, per se? The Chapter 13 plan payment is so important to understand because it actually can be more expensive than your current debt obligation. But at the same time, it could also be less expensive. So it really does depend. We get this question so often that we actually built a free Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator based on the actual bankruptcy forms. So you can estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment based on your zip code using the Colorado Chapter 13 calculator in the description below. Now, let's discuss how the Chapter 13 plan payment works, as it can often be confusing. So, what to know? There's various costs and fees. I want to go through the process of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Colorado, all the pros and cons attached, and the alternatives to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So, the Chapter 13 plan payment in Colorado. Let's do this. So, let's talk about the Chapter 13 plan payment. There are various factors of what goes into a Chapter 13, and I'm going to go through 4. So, first, the disposable income. The amount of income you have each month after subtracting all of the allowable payroll deductions and the allowable living expenses is what calculates your disposable income. Note that what they're deducting it from is your gross monthly income. So you can actually look on the government's means testing website, and you can find all the local standards there for Colorado for the housing, utilities, and transportation. Assets. So this is a big one. So in some cases, the value of your assets could increase your Chapter 13 plan payment. What I mean is, if your assets have a large amount of non-exempt equity, it could increase your monthly plan payment. For example, so if you own a home with a great deal of equity above the Colorado bankruptcy exemptions, your Chapter 13 plan could actually be much higher. Now, with regards to debts, some debts must be paid in full through its Chapter 13 plan. Those are generally considered the priority unsecured debts, and those are typically tax debt, alimony, child support, or administration costs. For example, you may see that you pay those in full, while creditors, you only may have to pay partially if the creditors are attached to unsecured debt like medical bills personal loans, credit card debt, etc. Chapter 13 plans typically include mortgage back payments and car loans. Now, finally, this is regarding any recent financial transactions. Sometimes recent financial transactions could actually impact your Chapter 13 plan. So it's important to consider those as well. Duration is also important to consider when filing or deciding whether to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Big question is, are you eligible for a 3 or 5 year plan? Well, your average monthly plan or your average monthly income is, when you compare it to the median income guideline, is actually what is used to help determine whether you're going to be on a 3 or 5 year plan, specifically in Colorado, right? So I'll add it below, but also here you can see the median income guidelines for Colorado for cases filed after May 15th, 2021. So you can either take our calculator or check the means test on the government's means test website for up-to-date information, as it changes regularly every 6 months. Now let's go through the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Colorado. The main fees to consider in a Colorado bankruptcy is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fees, trustee fees, filing fees, bankruptcy courses, and any other miscellaneous costs. The Chapter 13 calculator below in the description also accounts for all these fees, so it may be useful to use that, but nevertheless, let's cover each cost one by one. So, number 1, attorney fees. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Colorado is estimated to be around $2,700, roughly. Now, the fee may depend on the district, so a Chapter 13 attorney fee may be different from Colorado Springs comparatively to Aurora. It really depends on the district. Now, with regards to Chapter 13 trustee fees, another cost in Chapter 13 are the trustee fees. So, Chapter 13 bankruptcy, like we know now, is either a 3 or 5 year plan, so there are many administrative tasks in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy that a trustee has to do. So here's a breakdown, but generally you may see the Colorado Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee fees to be around 8.3%, but here's a breakdown just to be helpful. Now, just as reference, this can actually result in thousands of dollars in trustee fees, so just be aware of that. Filing fee. This will be less expensive, but it's just something to know, is the bankruptcy filing fee for a Chapter 13 case is $313. So the fee is paid to the bankruptcy court directly. It's a national fee, not specific to Colorado. So that's just something to know. There are lots of miscellaneous fees, such as bankruptcy courses and getting to the court. So just keep those in mind. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly plan payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros and cons, first cover the pros, excuse me. First pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. Two other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fees are also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.